The U.S. Defense Chief Leon Panetta has called on the Afghan president to thank American troops rather than criticize them. He was responding to Hamid Karzai's complaints this Thursday that Washington is failing to go after militants based in neighboring Pakistan. That's all on the eve of the 11th anniversary since NATO forces invaded the country. For more on that, I'm now joined by an anti-war activist and journalist, Mr. Don Deba. Good to see you there. Now, 11 years of war, the deaths of more than 2,000 American soldiers in the conflict. Isn't Panetta right? I mean, what do you think?
Well, first, how many dead Afghanis? The United States has a blind spot to the fact that people tend to have an affinity for their national sovereignty that doesn't disappear just because their country is occupied by the United States, but rather gets more or less brought to the fore when that happens. We saw this back in Vietnam. We got reports every night about Viet Cong, which sounded almost like King Kong, a dehumanizing term, instead of referring to the National Liberation Army, which was the name of the people that were fighting the U.S. occupation of the southern part of Vietnam. The same in Afghanistan and Iraq, for example. All of the fighting that's taken place in Iraq since the U.S. occupation has been referred to as factional, sectional, whatever. In fact, there's obviously a very strong component that is a national liberation effort. And you have this manifest in Afghanistan to the point where it's now obvious that if you hand an Afghani comprador soldier a weapon and show them how to use it, they turn it on the American soldier that handed it to them. The people of Afghanistan want the United States out, and it's a natural, thing for that to occur, and the United States just doesn't see that.
Speaking about what the Afghan people want, what will happen to them in 2014 when all the troops pull out? I mean, it seems the country is still locked in chaos and violence.
Yes. In my opinion, and this is shared by many, I think, one of the goals of the U.S. imperial project is to, where they can't completely dominate a place, leave the people at each other's throats while they carry off the resources. And so there's agitation for that that's put into play as the United States enters these countries. That we have seen, for example, in Iraq. We're seeing that in Libya, although not to the extent that they talk about here. There's also an indigenous liberation effort going on there. And this was stoked in Afghanistan. But I think directly to answer your question, what will happen in 2014 is the Afghanis will have an opportunity to settle their own national issues themselves without an occupying army directing the effort.
Back in July, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton declared Afghanistan a major ally. But now this controversy comes. What has changed since then?
I don't know exactly what's in Karzai's mind when he makes the statements that he made, which are more or less true statements. He may be actually just saying, finally, look, we have to face the truth, and starts to speak it. It may be that he's looking past 2014 and hoping to be able to continue without the army that more or less installed him on the ground there. I don't know which it is, but I think that Hillary Clinton, that was her mission accomplished moment, and she expresses the wants and desires of the elite in the United States and not necessarily reality when she makes these pronouncements.
Mr. Deba, I'm running out of time, but just quickly, tensions between the U.S. and Afghanistan have eroded in the past few months as dozens of foreign soldiers were killed in the so-called green on blue attacks. So what's forced the local troops to turn their guns against their mentors? I mean, they were training them, they were doing good.
Again, a sense of national identity, a sense of patriotism, and hostility towards an invader and occupier. It's a natural response.
We'll leave it right there. Mr. Don Deba, activist and journalist, speaking to us here on RT, giving your thoughts. Thank you for that.
Thank you, too.